I just went to visit Mrs. Shaorizi's house. I found out that everything I saw in previous videos, just as I was marveling at their openness. Mrs. Santaizi suddenly knelt in front of me. Ding, detected strong patriotic sentiment in the host. All hosts begin the strategy. Tokyo system priced at 3/6. System successfully bound to the Sen-Nako, 38 years old. She hopes her son's grades will improve. She also hopes to find support in Tokyo to alleviate her inner loneliness. I stared at the system panel in confusion. At that moment, the mechanical voice sounded again. After buying, the female lead's favorability will and rewards will be distributed by. At this moment, Sen Nako saw my life. She thought she hadn't performed well. Worried, she asked, "Mr. Mu, are you okay?" I snapped out of it and said, "Mrs., I'm fine. I just skipped breakfast and feel a bit hungry." Sen Nako immediately breathed a sigh of thinking about how I even skipped to tutor her son. She felt deeply moved. System prompt. Sen Nako's favorability towards the host in current favorability 12. For every 10 points of favorability, a lottery chance will be granted. Her face flushed red, turning as ripe as a screen. "Mr. Liu, why don't you stand up?" Sen Nako's gentle voice echoed. But I felt a bit playful. "Mrs., I seem to feel dizzy. I really don't want to get up." Not wanting to leave this gentle moment. But if I didn't get up, my favorability. Sen Nako helped me up. She, a 1.6 meter tall, trying to lift a 1.8. She slipped, and we both fell to the ground. Sen Nako's smile grew even redder. At this moment, a sound came from outside the door. It was Sen Nako's son returning home. Hearing her son's voice, Sen Nako panicked. "I got the medicine," the boy said casually. Danny said to him. He handed him the medicine. It turned out I fainted, and Sen Nako had said, "Mom, I told you there's no, and now there's trouble." Danny's refusal to study was a problem. He spends his days idling. It's not easy for Sen Nako to raise. In this place, education is highly, so she hired me to tutor him. I frowned, feeling displeased. "How can you? She's doing this for you. If you worked harder, none of this would." Sen Nako was immediately moved. It's been a long time since someone cared for. Sen Nako's favorability increased by 2, now at 14. She asked me to rest for a while and then went to cook. After the meal, Sen Nako cleared the dishes. I thought about helping her wash, mainly to gain more favorability, but she wouldn't let me. "Mr. Mu, how can you do such chores?" As I left the kitchen, Danya had a sour face. He slammed his math workbook. I glanced at the problems and grew impatient. "Can't you see I'm thinking? I'll head to the bathroom." While in the bathroom, I activated the system. "System, I want to draw a prize." As I spoke, the lottery page appeared in my mind. The system prompted, "First time use of the lottery? Luck value increased. The probability of winning the desired item has." A golden light flashed. Obtained the scholar. Whenever the host reads a book, knowledge from it will be absorbed instantly. What a perfect gift in this situation. Feeling reinvigorated, Danya grumbled, "Are we going to study or?" I immediately picked up the book and I finished it quickly. Knowledge poured into my mind. I analyzed and understood it thoroughly. At first, his eyes were filled, then anger. "Who reads like that? Do you even understand?" I smirked. Activating the scholar domain, solving these problems, I began explaining, but he couldn't understand it. I couldn't help but mock him. "Were you born dumb? You can't even understand something." I scolded him lightly, saying, "Your mom." He had no retort. All he could do was clench, his gaze full of frustration. Mrs. Sen Nako came in with a plate of fruit. "Miss, you must be tired. Have some fruit." She then turned to Danny. "You need to listen carefully." I smiled and said to her, "Mrs. Danya is very smart. He picks up on what I teach very quickly. His grades will definitely improve." Sen Nako's eyes lit up. She exclaimed excitedly, "Thank you so much, Mr. Mu." She gave me a bow. I thought to myself, more of this kind of gratitude. Soon, the day's tutoring was over. I happily said to Sen Nako, "I had a great time at your house today. It was wonderful seeing you as well." Sen Nako replied, "You're happy to see me?" I quickly said, "Of course I am. Seeing you is like seeing a..." Sen Nako blushed and tilted her head shyly. I continued, "Mrs. Sen Nako, I'm not in a rush to leave. How about we chat for a while?" We sat on the couch and I smiled and said, "I've learned. Would you like to give it a try, Mrs.?" Sen Nako laughed in surprise. "I didn't expect you to have." Gradually, we found ourselves getting and the atmosphere became more harmonious. Sen Nako nodded thoughtfully. "What do you usually like to do?" I enjoy reading and sometimes going for walks. But I especially love. Sen Nako understood my implication, and her face turned red instantly. I added, "I also like supernatural phenomena." "Really? That sounds fascinating. Have you ever encountered something?" Sen Nako asked curiously. "Once?" Sen Nako curiously asked, "Once? I saw a ghost appear in my room. But as I approached, it disappeared. Another time, I felt a mysterious force pulling me, as if it wanted to take me somewhere." I recalled seriously, "Wow, that's incredible. Maybe you have some kind of special ability, Senako said in amazement. We kept chatting, and time slipped by without us noticing. Seeing the favorability points steadily, our conversation became even more engaged. Eventually, Senako fell asleep, but the system's voice still echoed in my ear. My eyes widened suddenly, as countless thoughts flashed through my mind. I stood still, carefully contemplating. The system reported in my mind. Senako's favorability toward me was, but the problem was, she was clearly, it shouldn't be increasing. There was only one explanation. Senako wasn't really asleep. In other words, she was pretending. Thinking of this, a chill ran down my spine. I had thought I was the real hunter here, but it turned out I was someone else's prey. Should I continue playing the role of the prey and see where this leads? With that thought, my eyes lit up. Just then, suddenly some noise came from Danny's room. I quickly ducked and hid. With a creak, the door opened. I saw Danny holding a wad of tissue, hiding it behind his. At that moment, I instantly understood. Danny was already 20 years old. Thinking about it, it wasn't surprising. A few minutes later, Danny came out of the bath and went back to his room. Only then did sit on the couch and take a sip of water. My mood gradually calmed down. It was definitely intentional. I became more certain in my heart. I decided to play a trick myself. I pretended to lie on the couch and sleep. After a few minutes, Senako gradually got up. Seeing that I was asleep, she walked over to my side. After confirming I was deep, she went into the bathroom. I watched the shadow reflected from the bathroom as countless thoughts filled my. Who is the hunter here? And who is the prey? Gradually, the sound of running water. A few minutes later, Senako emerged. She had changed into a silky white robe, her flawless figure fully accentuated. Senako glanced at the couch, where I appeared to be sound asleep. The night air was a bit chilly. If this continued, I might catch a cold. Senako went to her room and brought out a blanket to cover me. At that moment, I opened my eyes. Mrs. Senako, why am I here? You fell asleep just now, so I covered you with a blanket, Senako said gently. I nodded slightly, my expression tinged with, it's not comfortable. Let me tidy up the guest room so you can sleep there, Senako said with a smile. I nodded gently. It had been a long day, and I needed a good. I got up and followed Senako to the guest room. The alluring figure before me made the corners of my lips curl into a smug. Soon, it would be clear who was the hunter and who was the prey.